Today we're going to start on 14b. That's the Dalit on the base. Okay. Okay. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. In the course of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash. Do you agree? Okay, the Mishnah starts like this. Shum Kesef. Shum means an evaluation. It's an evaluation is done. The way we evaluate damages, we evaluate it for money. What was the value of the damage? Shava Kesef. We do this with things that are worth money. The Gemara is going to say it's actually talking about property. That the way we collect the payment is with property. That why property is called Shava Kesef is very surprising. But anyway, it says Bifnei Bezdin. It needs to be done in front of a court. Talking about how to resolve after the damage is done. And Valpi Edim, and it needs to be with witnesses. And the Gemara is going to explain Bnei Chayrin. The witnesses are free people, which means that they're not slaves. Bnei Bris, and they're Jewish. That's explaining the witnesses. When it comes to damages, whether they're the damager or the damagee, women are included in that. And all the laws of damages, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. And the damager and the damagee are both included in the payment. We'll see what that means also. But it could mean that if in certain cases they pay half price, it could mean that the damagee is contributing half of the payment because he's only getting half. That could be a shot. We'll see in the Gemara. Okay, but the Gemara analyzes the wording of the Mishnah. This Mishnah is very cryptic. Does not elaborate at all. The whole Mishnah is just 2.5 lines. Okay, Maishum Kesef. It says, what are you talking about when you said that you evaluate the damage? You evaluate it with money. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Shum zeh leihayela bekesef. That the way we evaluated damage is only with money. All right. Tanina lad the Tanur Rabbanan. It was taught in a brisa exactly what it says in our Mishnah. So what does the brisa say? Para shezika talis, v'talis shezika para. Let's say there was a cow that caused damage to a talis. For a cow to cause damage to a talis is very easy. It tramples on it and it looks like a mess when it's finished. And how does a talis cause damage to a para? The talis was on the floor. Para is a cow. The talis was on the floor and the para was walking and it tripped on it and it slid and it fell over and it caused damage as if it would have been a pit. That would be, and we're talking about over there and there's just a rab. So we don't say that you take the para that got damaged, the cow that damaged the talis. The owner of the talis doesn't say, okay, that's it. I'm taking your cow, or and keep. You can't do that. He has to actually evaluate it. And the same thing is with the talis that was on the floor that it caused damage to the para, to the cow. The owner of the cow can't say, okay, that's it. I'm taking that talis. It's not, you lost it. You don't know how to what. It's not how it works. You have to actually evaluate each thing. So you have to actually evaluate. The commentaries discuss that why would I even thought that this would be acceptable? I mean, I can hear someone saying that, but why should that in a rule book? Why should we even have to say that you can't do that? You have to. Maybe it's just because people think like that. Anyway, Shava Kesef. Yeah.
Maybe they were associated with on the board that there's more damage.
Interesting.
It's worth.
Yeah, they were saying that maybe people would compare it to migufa, that when you collect the payment of chatzi nezek, of the half payment, you collect it from the animal itself. They were thinking maybe you can confiscate the talis, but even over there, when you collect the payment, you don't take any more than what it's worth. Here we're just saying that you just take its value. Now, you take from the talis or from the para? I don't think so. Okay.
Well, there are limited circumstances in which one can take it. So it could be to clear up confusion.
What cases could someone take it?
If something is stolen. So if your bike has been taken and you walk through the neighborhood and see your bike in someone's backyard, you can lean over and grab it out.
That would only be the item itself.
Only the item itself, right?
That wouldn't be, he owes me money and now I see he has a bike.
Right, correct. Correct.
Wasn't there the case when the person wouldn't pay back the loan? The lender would go to the person's house and not help them.
Right. Right, but that would be exactly the value of whatever it was, whatever he owed. So. Yeah. If you want to say that every single Havamina in the Gemara had to have a full logic, this is difficult to explain. But could be it's just saying that it just makes sure that you don't say that. It's not like we really, I'm not sure. In other words, without the Mishnah, I don't think we would have said that anyway. But Shava Kesef, the Tanur Rabbanan was taught in the Brisa. Shava Kesef means it has a value, a monetary value. Well, that's what we're going to use in collections. The Tanur Rabbanan was taught in the Brisa. Shava Kesef, Malamed Shein Bezdin Niskak and El Nechasim Sheish Lamachrayas. This means that Bezdin only comes to collect, and they'll only collect from property that has a guarantee on it. Now, that's referring to realty. Because when someone buys realty, there's a guarantee. Is it because he buys it? Why is it called
It's attached to his property.
I'm not sure where the name comes from. We have to look that up. Is it because when you borrow money, you can use the property as a collection, and it's called a guarantee on the borrowed money? Or is it when you sell property and something happens to it, you can go back to or someone claims it, you can go back to the original owner and get the money back? Yeah, that sounds like that's more direct. Nechasim sheish lamachrayas means that the property itself has a guarantee. That sounds what it is. But whatever the case is, what we're saying now is that if there's money that's owed because of a damage, the Bezdin comes and collects realty. Avalim kadam nizik betafas metalplin. But if the damagee, the nizik, the victim, goes to the perpetrator and he grabs personality, like just other items that the person has, Bezdin says that's fine, they accept it. He wasn't supposed to, but once he took it, they accept it. Amar Mar, okay, and we have to explain what we just said. We quoted a brisa. The Gemara goes back to analyze the brisa. Shava Kesef comes to items that have value in money. Where do you get the translation of Shava Kesef to mean? Shava Kesef means it's worth money to mean realty. How do you get that? Worth money? Usually Shava Kesef is actually referring to personality, movable items, other possessions, not realty. And over here we're saying that it means realty. Well, Amar Rabba Bar Ula, Davar Hashava Kol Kesef. Rabba Bar Ula explains that realty is worth any money that you pay for it. You can never be considered overcharged when it comes to realty. My neo, what is this referring to? Davar shein layana, something that has no ayna, which means being overcharged. How do they translate fraud? I don't know if it's really fraud. It's not fraud. It's ayna means when you hurt someone. You can't be hurt by being overcharged by realty. You can't say the person that overpaid for a property. It's like okay, so wait, the price comes in. It's not like you overpaid on a computer. The price goes down.
Well, he bought it. So
he finds out that he could have gotten another property somewhere else. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. Eventually, usually the market goes up.
Usually the market goes up over time, at least in the big picture.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a Jewish concept. This wasn't just a Jewish concept. This was the norm in the old days. And the reason is because every property was considered unique. So you can't overpay or underpay for something that's, one of a kind.
There's also a rule that things are worth what people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah. Maybe Phil is saying things are worth what people are willing to pay for it. He paid this for it, so that's what it's worth. As if you want to get a mortgage. Yeah. Okay. So the Gemara asks, we have a rule that when it comes to buying a slave or to buying documents, we have a rule that it has the same halacha as buying realty. So if you buy a slave also, we don't say that you can ever claim that you paid too much and the sales off. You can't say that. That's the rule. So if that's the case, so why are we saying that you can only collect from realty? You should really be able to collect from avadim, and if it's shava kesef means that anything that doesn't have a that you can't claim that I was overcharged. It should apply to slaves and documents as well. Documents is referring to if someone buys someone else's debts, to go collect the not that he doesn't buy the debts, he buys the loans to go and collect them. Same rule applies that if he overpays on that, that's not considered a na. Ella, so Amar Rabba Bar Ula Davar Hanikna Mekesef. Not something that's Shavak Kol Kesef, something that's worth any money you pay for it, but rather something that's acquired with money. That means that certain things, in order to acquire it, you have to lift them up. Other things you have to pull. But land, realty, is you acquire it with money. Gemara says, you're not getting out of the problem. You're like digging in deeper. We're trying to avoid avadim, slaves, and documents, and so you change the pshat, you're stuck with it again. Because how do you acquire a slave? With money. How do you acquire documents? Also with money. Elam Ravashi Shava Kesef V'lei Kesef. Ravashi says that we're talking about something that's worth money, but not something that's actually money. And now that means realty, because Vahani Kulu Kesef Nino, because all of those things are really considered money. Because of bartering, they're considered money. Because you can exchange this for that, or a thing for one item for another item, so that's considered money. But realty is not considered money. Realty actually has to be acquired with money, but it's not something that's movable. So that's how Ravashi is explaining Shava Kesef, that it's Shava, it has a worth of money, but it's not actually money. Well, Rami Le Rav Yehuda Bar Chinan or Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua is a student of Abai and Rava, friend of Rav Papa, and Rav Yehuda Bar Chinan asked him a question. Tana was taught in the Brisa Shava Kesef Melamed Shein Business Gakanel Nechasim Sheish Lamachrayas. You taught us in the Brisa. So what does it mean that Bezdin collects for a damage? It uses realty. That means that it can't take something that's movable items. Well, Tanya, but we have another Brisa. Yashav Rabbi Shava Kesef Afilu Subin. We said that you can collect movable items. You can collect anything that's worth money, including brand. Afilu Subin. Now you're telling me it's only realty. We're talking about collecting a debt from orphans, which means that the father's property caused the damage. Now you're coming to collect because the father passed away and the father's not there. So you're trying to collect from orphans. The rule is that there's no lien on the orphan's estate, on this estate. The only lien is going to go on realty, but not on personalty. And so if you're going to collect, you have to take it from the property, and that's why that's what our Mishnah is talking about when it says Shava Kesef, which means realty, and that other Mishnah, that other Brisa that says Yashiv, the Rabbi Shava Kesef Afilu Subin, that's talking about when you're taking from the father himself, not when you're taking from the orphans.
I've always wondered, there's a general case. Why does Rizal see the need to add a specific statement in order for that to fit? You know what I mean? The general statement is coming out over here. I want to insert this other statement for it to fit. Once you think that statement that's just very superfluous or whatever,
Just drop it.
Shot. Yeah,
I think that's covered in here, isn't it?
Give me an example of what you're asking.
Well, this
over
is
here.
the example. The example here is that it means that how can a basin
Bezdin can only take a property.
Personality, yeah. No, wait.
Oh, and then it says we have another
property,
brisa that says personalty.
And it seems, was it Rav Yehuda Bar Chanina?
Yeah.
He adds this clause in for that to work, but wouldn't that general statement be the one that we follow completely? Or?
Yeah. So I think what's happening is that we have a statement in the Gemara that says he can only use realty to collect. Rav Yehuda Bar Chanina throws in another statement that he knows from somewhere else a few pages back that says you're allowed to collect from brand. Now, in order to resolve that contradiction, so then we come in and we say, well, this case is talking about orphans. In that case, it's talking about collecting from the father. So now what the Gemara says is
there a time limit on calling someone an orphan? An age limit, I mean.
No, I think there it depends on what, but I think over here what it's referring to is anytime when it wasn't the original person that caused the damage, then we call anyone that's just taking care of the estate or whatever, anytime after that is always called the orphans.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't do the same claims that they don't know all the details. So
specification followed by a general rule, or a general rule followed by a specification?
You see, those 13, that list of 13 is when I'm reading in the text of the Chumash. And then I would say, like, if you find a lost object, that's a garment or an animal or this, that would be a general followed by a specification. Well, that's only from the text of the Torah. Here we're reading from the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah mean? It doesn't use that list on the Mishnah.
So this doesn't apply to the Gemara, but
it is. No,
it's what the Mishnah?
No, it's what the Gemara and the Mishnah does to the Chumash. That list is how the Gemara and the Mishnah. It's asking about Rabbi Shmuel, like which one of these. Yeah, that's how it's studied. It goes back to the Chumash and studies the Chumash like that. Yeah. Gemara says, if we're talking about orphans in Maseifa, then let's go further. That if he took personalty, that the Bezdin says, okay, that's an acceptable payment, even though you weren't supposed to, but once it's done, it's acceptable. So the Ibi asked me, my Bezdin gave him. If it's orphans, then why was he allowed to do that? He should not be allowed to do. The Bezdin should actually go and say you took something that you weren't allowed to, and they should put it back. You can't just grab from orphans personalty. Rava says, that he had taken while the father was still alive. In other words, the damage was done while the father was alive. If he wants to collect after, then he has to collect from realty. But if he had grabbed from the father's estate while the father was still alive, he had grabbed personalty, then that's acceptable. So that's how we're going to explain this, the second case of this brisa, and it's going to fit with the realty is after the father passed away, and the personalty that works is going to be while he's alive. And then next thing we said was Bifnei Bezdin. It says that the evaluation of the money is done in front of Bezdin, of the payment is going to be done in front of Bezdin. The Gemara says that this is excluding someone that has property, but quickly sells the property off before he goes to Bezdin, and then he goes to Bezdin. The Gemara says, "Shema mina loivel meichen nechasav achkach bol Bezdin ein Bezdin goven lamen." What are you saying? Saying someone borrows money, he quickly sells all the property that he owns, and then he runs to Bezdin and he says, "I don't have any money. I don't have any property." Is that what you're saying? That he can get away with that? The Gemara says no. Ella prat lebestin adjetis. That's not what it means. We did not read the Mishnah correctly. We did not imply correctly from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that it needs to be in front of Bezdin. What it really means is that you need to have a Bezdin that had smicha, a proper Bezdin. Why? Because we're going to be dealing with cases now that it's called knas. It's called penalties. And when we're dealing with restitution, we can collect a restitution even if the Bezdin doesn't have smicha. This person borrows money and he doesn't pay back. Any Bezdin can say that he has to pay back and arrange for a payment plan, something like that. But when it comes to a penalty, something that's not a restitution, that you need a Bezdin Dayanim that have smicha to impose that sort of payment. That's what we're going to be dealing with coming up. So it says that it needs to be a real Bezdin, not hedyotis. Hedyotis in English is translated as idiots, but that's not what it means. It means regular people, right?
These penalties, is it like someone steals, they have to pay double, or is it like something that is like up to the rabbi's like discretion? The penalties that they're gonna push.
One of them is double. That's one of the penalties. Yeah.
4, 5, 10.
Right.
Was it a fine and a penalty, or those are two different things that we discussed before?
Yeah, well, fine and penalty will go together. And then
Oh,
the
so
other
it's,
side, it's either restitution or a fine or penalty.
Yeah.
Them. The payment is done when there are witnesses that testify that the damage took place. This is coming to exclude if the person himself admits to the damage that was done or the crime that he committed. For example, what you said, if he stole, he says he runs to Beth and he says, I stole this. So if he stole, then really he should pay double. That's the rule. Someone that steals secretly has to pay double. But if he doesn't get caught, but he turns himself in, so then he doesn't have to pay. What we're saying now is that not only if he turns himself in, is he exempt from payment from not the original payment, the double payment, he's exempt from.
Yeah.
What we're saying now is that applies even if witnesses come later and say, we saw him doing it. He turned himself in because he saw the witnesses maybe around the corner. And he ran quickly and turned himself in. He says, I'm a good guy. I turned himself in, here it is. And then the witnesses come. So we're saying now that he's exempt from paying because he made it first to the Bezdin. He admitted before the witnesses. So the Gemara says, well, that's not so clear. Because that fits well according to that opinion that holds that if someone admits to a penalty, and then the witnesses come that he's exempt. But according to the other opinion that says the only time that you're exempt from turning yourself in, from paying the penalty when you turn yourself in, that's only if we have no other source in the world to get to incriminate. But over here, where we have witnesses, even though they came later, but you're still chayav. We ignore what you said. We're going to rely on the witnesses. According to that opinion, Ma'ik Lamema, what's the Mishnah saying? What's the Mishnah saying? That it needs to be LPAdim and it can't be by his own what's it called? What's it called?
I think it has
Self-incriminating. Self-admission. It can't be from his self-admission. So, but it turns out that even if it is self-admission, but if the witnesses come later, the same thing's going to happen. Well, Seifet Strichle, the Gemara says. We actually have something else that the Mishnah is teaching us, not what you thought. It's talking about that when it says Al Pi Edim, it didn't mean that it needs to be Al Pi Edim only. What it means is that it's defining what type of Edim it needs to be. That means that it needs to be, the Edim need to be B'nei Chayrin or B'nei Bris. We're on top of page 15. The Edim need to be not slaves, and they need to be Jewish. B'nei Chayrin, what does it mean, not slaves? That's excluding, B'nei Chayrin means free people. And it's excluding slaves. B'nei Bris Jewish is coming to exclude that they're not non-Jewish. But now, if you can't use a slave, of course you can't use a non-Jew. As a non-Jew, a slave is partially Jewish, right? The non-Jew is even less Jewish, right? The slave at least has to keep some mitzvahs. The Gemara explains, Shrichi, he needed to say both. Yashmin and Eved, if it would only say the slave, that he's not an acceptable witness, I could have thought maybe he's Mishum Dein Layichas. He has no lineage. I guess that means that maybe what the pshat is over here is that we don't say that when it comes to slaves that this is the son of this person, the son of that. They're just their own individual person. Which maybe that means that when it comes to testifying, they have no
Wait.
They have no family concerns that they're going to look like a bad person, and which looks bad for the family. I'm making that up. This shot. I didn't see this in the commentary. I'm saying, why should yichus have anything to do with testifying? I'm just saying that maybe that you don't want to. Maybe the greater family puts some sort of pressure on every individual in it that they should come across honest.
The slaves, would they refer themselves like Eliezer did? Or I'm a servant of, is that how they would refer themselves?
I'm not sure. Probably a good slave.
And the slaves, their testimony might be compromised because their master might tell them, oh, you have to say this.
That's an interesting point. Hill is saying that the slave's testimony may be compromised because the master may tell him what he has to say. Could be. Okay, but let's say Aval Nachri, when it comes to another non-Jew, the Yeshla Yachas, a regular non-Jew, does have a family. He has a family, he has a father, mother, he has cousins, halachas that apply to that. So, a regular non-Jew. Say Malay, I would say that maybe you can trust him when he testifies about a damage. B'yashmin and Nachri, if it would say only that a non-Jew you can't trust his testimony about a damage from the shaykh mitzvahs because a non-Jew has no commandments. Aval ever the shaykh mitzvahs, but a slave that does have some commandments, say Malay, would say, look, yes, commandments, we should trust him as well. The Hill is asking that the non-Jew has 7.
Talking about no height laws.
Yeah. We're talking about, but in comparison to the 613, he doesn't have. The slave has a bunch of mitzvahs that he has to keep. All the mitzvahs that a woman has to keep. And they had a bris. I think so. Okay. Right. Okay. Now it's so tzricha. Okay, so we need to say all of those cases. So anashim bechlal anezek. It says that women are included in the laws of damages, whether the woman was damaged or whether the woman was damaging, like let's say she had animals that caused the damage. The same halachas apply as it would to a man. Minani mili, from where do we know this? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. This says the name of Rav, most common 5-word phrase in Shas. Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav says, "V'chein tana devei Rabbi Yishmael." It's also taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Amar Kra. The pasuk says, "Isha yisha kiyasim kol chatas." Any man or woman that will do any of these sins, which means this is referring to someone that swears falsely when it comes to denying some money that's owed. So it says that they have to bring a sacrifice. It says ish a yisha, a man or a woman. You have that pasuk. We learn from that when it comes to all punishments, men and women are the same. Yeah. There's a bunch of Gemaras that say, so why do I need that pasuk if they're the same anyway? That's a Gemara Tamura and other places that goes through the why this is necessary. But we're going to have some other sources. These are the laws that you should place before them. Before them is including all the Jewish people. This is right after the giving of the Torah. You place the laws before them. That means in place in front of the women and in front of the men. The laws are the same for men and women. Bechizkiah, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Tana, Yeshiva of Chizkiah and Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that's a friend of Rabbi Akiva, taught Amar Kra. It's interesting because Chizkiah is later. Rabbi Lazar is later, but Rabbi Yishmael, I get what's going on. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav is an Amayra, an early Amayra. Rabbi Lazar is a little bit later than him, and then the Bechizkiah could be maybe later than that. Maybe that's what it means. They quote that it says in the pasuk Behemis Isha Yisha. If it killed, this is the ox that killed a man or a woman, the ox has to pay kaifer, which is a payment, the value of either the person that owned the ox, damager, or the damagee. For any death, the Torah compares a man to a woman with all of those halachas. And it's necessary to have all three of these verses where we can derive that a woman is the same as a man in all laws of the Torah. The Yashmin and would only say from the swearing, when a person has to swear if they owe the money and they lied, then they have to bring the sacrifice. Maybe over there the Torah is concerned that the halacha should be the same for a woman because we want the woman to get an atonement, which means she has to bring the sacrifice for lying. But when it comes to laws, maybe ishtabar masa matanin ishalai. And when it comes to business, it says that these are the laws that you should place before them, and it says a bunch of business laws. I would say that business laws applies to men, but women that don't do business, maybe it doesn't apply to them. Maybe they have their own set of rules. They're not like familiar with the marketplace and how things work like that. So like Biyashmina Dinif would only say Ela Mishpatim Ashitasim Lifneim, I would have thought if we're going to say that women don't have the laws of business, those business laws, so then no one's going to want to do business with them, because if you don't have the standards of how things are supposed to be run, if you do this, then this, all of those laws, then we don't want to do business, and they're not going to be able to buy anything. They won't be able to borrow money if the laws don't apply. So we want them to be able to have some sustenance. Aval kapara. But when it comes to atonement, I could have thought, ish the bar mitzvah in. We're only concerned with the man's atonement because the man has a lot of mitzvahs. We have to make sure that he gets an atonement. Aisha, the lav bas mitzvah, maybe a woman that doesn't have all those extra mitzvahs, so doesn't have to get that atonement. Biyashminan. If it would say those hani tarti, these last two things about the swearing and also about the and also about the business, I could have thought that we have special reasons for that. One is because we want an atonement, another one is because we wanted them to be able to survive. They should be able to do business. But when it comes to killing an animal that kills a man or a woman, ishtabar mitzvah l'shalim kaifer. If it belonged to a man, the ox belonged to a man, then the man that has mitzvahs, maybe he's the one that's supposed to pay the kaifer. Ishalai, but a woman that doesn't have mitzvahs, doesn't have the same amount of mitzvahs, we would say that maybe she doesn't have to pay that kaifer. V'yashmin and kaifer would only say this mishum dikad neshama. I would say no, a woman does have to pay because the fact is someone died over here. That's very serious. So we're not going to let a woman off the hook. Avalhani tarti, but those other cases, teleki ben neshama, but you don't have any loss of life. You don't have any loss of life. We'd say it doesn't apply. So tzricha, it's necessary to have all three of these halachas. Yeah, I have some guys in the yeshiva that they we say, how come you're late? You came. He says, look, there's no loss of life. Take it easy.
So smart.
And then besides, what's the difference? 20 minutes here, there, it doesn't matter. The big picture. Does this really make a difference?
Yeah, it says it
So do you
does.
think Hashem really cares about, a stolen little man?
It says right here.
What does it say?
It says these are the precepts for which no fixed measure is prescribed.
Oh.
Blah 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 blah. These are the precepts, the fruits of which man enjoys in this world. The reward remains in the world to come. Honoring kindness, early attendance at the house.
Oh, early attendance to house study. Yeah, very good. Okay. Hanizik v'amazik b'desh lumen. Very good. The now with the Gemara discusses this, we switch topics. I mean, whenever you have two dots in the Gemara, you see a colon in the Gemara. I don't know if you have it, but whenever you have the two dots on the regular Gemara page, it's usually going back to quote another few words from the Mishnah, the original text. You'll see like two dots, about three to 10 words, and then another two dots, and that's the way they would. We would do today. We would do quotations, but that's the way they did it. Okay, this says that the damager and the damagee are both involved in the payment. It's stated like this: Palganiska. We're waiting for this Gemara for the last 14 pages. Comes to Chatzi Nezek. If an ox gores another ox with intent to cause damage, it's called Karen. It damaged with intentionally, which we were talking a lot of the animal trampled on something, the animal ate. This is if it causes damage. Now, the first 3 times that it does this, it doesn't pay full price. It only pays half price. Question is, why does it?
First 2 and the third time.
The question is, why does it pay half price? Do we say that really he should be pater? He never did this damage before. He doesn't have to pay anything. But we're going to put a penalty on him to make sure that he does a better job watching his animal, even though really he's exempt according to the Torah. According to Torah logic, he should be exempt. But we put a penalty on him. That could be one shot. The other shot is really he should pay full price. But you know what? It's his first time. We'll let him get off halfway. Now, the difference between that is, if we say really he should pay full price, but we'll let him get off, that means that the payment, even though it's only half the payment, but that's restitution. Whenever you pay the exact price, then that's assumed that that's restitution. But when you're paying not the exact price, then we say that must be some sort of penalty.
Right.
But over here, really, he was supposed to pay the full price. We're just giving him a discount. So we're giving him a discount, but it's still considered restitution. The other approach is that, no, he's really supposed to be exempt. And the fact that he's paying anything is telling me that all he's paying is just a penalty. So this is a famous machlekes in later Amiraim. It's interesting that it took till Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. It goes like this: Palganiska. When it comes to paying half price, Rav Papa Amar Mamaina. Rav Papa says that that's considered restitution. It's a payment for the damage. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Amar Knasa. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua is a friend of Rav Papa. He says that it's a penalty.
Don't worry, 7.5 years, it's a small amount of time. You think Hashem cares?
Dr. Stein came in. He says, "Don't worry, 7.5 years. It's you miss a day here or there." Okay. So
please tell him he's very funny.
Yeah. You see, in Chassidus, when you study Chassidus, it could give you a mindset of God is so big that really nothing matters. And there's even verses that support that in Tzedakta Matitin Lai, that really nothing matters in front of Hashem. And the answer to that is that that's true, but Hashem said that it does matter. It's sort of like father says, pick this up or something, whatever. The child says, no. What's the big deal? It's on the floor. Whatever, someone else will pay. Says it's not a big deal. I can pick it up also, but I told you to. So because I told you to, it's important. That's how it works. Okay.
In Kabbalah, though, there's a system, cause and effect, and so if you do something wrong,
Yeah, this is beyond that. This is that really from Hashem, it really doesn't matter. Beyond all of that. That's in the small worlds, it's like that. But in the big picture, it doesn't matter. But because Hashem said so, it matters. Anyway, Rav Papa says that it's a monetary payment. That means that it's a restitution. What really is going on, why Rav Papa is saying that it's considered restitution when he pays half price, is because regular oxen are not considered guarded, and it was your obligation to guard it. The fact that you didn't guard it, even though it never happened before, but you have to pay full price. But the Eibishter, the merciful one, has compassion, and he says the fact is it never happened before, yeah, and so we let you get off. But really, you were supposed to be watching it fully. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Amar. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says Knasa. That is no, it's the opposite. It's a penalty. Really, normal oxen don't need to be guarded at all. You did nothing wrong. But really, you shouldn't have to pay anything. Rahmanu the Kanse, but the Eibishter is being strict on you. So that from now on we should watch your ox. That's what it sounds like. From now on, So the fine, the penalty is because we see something's going on with yours.
And giving the damagee like money, kind of like to make up for the loss, is not considered.
If it's not exactly the money, so then it may be just a penalty.
I'll be taking off in a minute.
Ah, okay. Shalom's not here yet. Safe trip.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
But one ox hurts another, kills another one, and then that half price, because it was the first time, that money goes to the the damaged party. So wouldn't that kind of like make up for the loss?
It
So at
makes
least they
up
have-
part of the loss, but because it's not the whole loss, we don't view it as it's possible that you don't view it as restitution. There's a logic like this and a logic like that. That's the machlekes.
Just want to say something from before. You say that I'm a Rabbi Yehuda, and you say that that's, the most famous thing. The end of it, which is, and then after it says, I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm a Rav, tell me the
Rabbi Shmuel. That's not as
Shmuel.
common.
what?
That's not as common.
No, I'm gonna say it is as common because he learned from both of them. So when he says that, why don't we say he's saying this is what was taught here? But you know what? It's also Rabbi Shmuel because I learned about Yeshiva. He learned from both those. Rav and Shmuel. He's the guy who comes right.
Oh, you're saying Rabbi? Yeah, but this is not Shmuel. This is Yishmael. End of the day, Rabbi Shmuel.
Sorry. Oh, it's such a perfect time for Shmuel.
That was like perfect timing.
Someone said like
That's
this.
a real.
How come
comedian.
this week's parsha is Parshas Vayetze? Someone says, how come the vav of Vayetze? Why is it a big vav? So they said the vav in Vayetze is not a big vav. He says that's one answer. Okay. So.
So you have important things.
Okay, so we have a machlekes here between Rav Papa, who says Memaina, and Rav Huna Rav Yeshua that says it's a knas, it's a penalty. Okay, now we're going to try to figure out who's correct. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to quote earlier sources and try to figure out, is it restitution or is it a penalty? It goes like this. Tanan, our Mishnah, we start with our Mishnah. It says, Hanizik v'amazik b'dashlum. Says that both the damager and the damagee are involved in the payment. It works out well according to the one that holds which is Rav Papa. According to Rav Papa, that says that it's restitution when he pays half payment. That's why the nizik, the damagee, is doing partial payment. Really, the guy is supposed to pay the whole thing because he really owed. The nizik is supposed to get everything, 100%. But the nizik is involved. We take 50% from the nizik, we take 50% from the mazik, and that's considered the payment. That's what it means that both of them are involved in the payment. But according to Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, that says that it's a penalty. The mazik wasn't supposed to be paying anything. The nizik, the damagee, is taking money from the mazik as a penalty, and when he really doesn't, it's not owed to him at all, and he's taking it anyway. But tashlum and isay, now you're telling me that he's doing a half a payment. So even any money that he gets is extra. He's not paying. Follow? It's a raya to Rav Papa. The Gemara explains it's not necessary. Ella only lepchas nevela. What we're talking about over here is that the payment that the damagee is involved in, that is because he takes the broken pieces or he takes the carcass of the animal as part of the payment, and the damager has to fill in the rest. That's considered his payment. That's considered his involvement in the payment, is because he owns that carcass that was just damaged by the damager, and its value, let's say, originally it cost 100, the carcass has cost 25. The damager only has to pay half of 75. That's the damage. So his involvement is the 25 that he's giving as in the carcass. And if that carcass gets worth less, that's his loss.
Didn't you say before that Sometimes, I forget the names of them, but sometimes the money goes to the court when it's a penalty, I guess, and sometimes it goes.
Yeah, I think usually, it could be it goes to the court.
Reimbursement.
Now it would go towards the reimbursement, but nevertheless, we're still not going to consider it restitution according to this opinion. We'll still consider it a penalty. Chas nevela, you're saying that we're talking about if the carcass gets worth less, and that's the loss of the damagee. Hatanale ratio that we already learned. We said tashlumi nezek. We said the payment for damage. We learned we had a discussion about this before. Who has to schlep the animal out of the pit, and if it gets worth less, whose loss is that? That whole thing. Well, the Gemara says chada b'tam v'chada b'muad. I know we learned it before, but before we were talking about a tam. Over here we're talking about a muad. The tzricha. The tam is a tame animal. Muad means it's forewarned. Diash mean tam. If we would be talking about a tame animal, because it was never forewarned. But by a muad, we would say maybe the nevela belongs to the mazik. Diash mean and muad mishum the kamashalim kula. If I would say a muad that the nevela belongs to the nezek, to the damagee, I would say, well, that's because he's giving full payment. Aval tam. When it comes to a tame animal, I would say maybe he's not paying the full damage. I'd say maybe he should at least pay the full damage of the whole entire item, and let him keep he should pay the half of the value of the entire item, and let him keep the broken pieces. By the muad, you follow? By the muad, where he's paying the full price anyway. He said, let him pay $75. But by the time where he's only paying $37.50, they say that 1 second, he's only paying $37.50. Let him at least pay $50. And and he'll keep the carcass. Maybe I would switch it. So Kamash Malan, it has to tell me by the muad that you don't, by the time that you don't say that.
For both the time and the muad, the damaged party keeps the carcass?
Yeah. In conclusion, the damaged party keeps the carcass for both the tam and the muad. Okay. Tashema, so come and listen. Ma bin tam lemuad. What's the difference between a tam and a muad? This is another brisa, and the Gemara asks the question, what's the difference of tam and a muad? And the fact that it's not going to give us a difference, that the muad pays restitution and the tam pays a penalty, that's going to be a proof that it's not so, that both of them pay restitution. That's a proof to Rav Papa. It's a kasha on Rafuna Bridge Rav Yeshua. You'll see it play out. And it says, Ma bin tam lemut. Shatam mishalem chatzi nezek migufay, lemud mishalem nezek mishalem min aliyah. That's the whole difference. What's the difference? A tam and a mud? The tam pays half price, and he pays from the body of the damager ox, and the muad pays full price, and he pays from the best of his property. Could be real estate or something like that. And if it's true that it's just a fine, chatzi nezek, half payment. If Ravuna Bridge of was correct, listening Amihal, why doesn't it say the following? Tam ena mishalem al pi atzmei. A tame animal can't pay on his own if he comes to admit. If the guy shows up in court and says, he turns himself in, he says that my ox, Tom, but it caused damage, no one saw it, but it was me. Now, if it's a penalty, he's exempt, because if you turn yourself in, you don't have to pay the penalty. Right. If it's restitution, then you just admitted that you owe money, so you have to pay it. So when the Bryce asked what's the difference of tam and a muad, and it only said the tam pays half price migufay from the body, and the muad pays full price from the best of the property, we could have had a third item over there, that a tam doesn't pay on his own, and by his own admission, and a muad does pay on his own admission. Muad mishalem al pi atzmei, and a muad would pay on his own admission. The Gemara says that's not a full proof, because you're proving it from something that it didn't say. Yeah, that's another thing my students tell me. Would you get me into trouble for something I didn't do? No. I said, well, I didn't do my homework. Okay, so we're just proving this from the fact that it didn't say something, and now that's not a full proof because it says ton of Vishaya. It left out some other things as well. So the fact that it didn't say this is not a proof. Where it says my shire, the high shire. That's what the Gemara always does whenever it says it left something out. It says, what did it leave out that it also left this out? You know, if it only leaves out one item, then that's very suspicious. But if it left out other things, then that just means it's not an exhaustive list. So shaya chatzi kaifer, it left out that there's a concept of kaifer. And a tam, what it really means, shia chatzi kaifer, means that it doesn't have to pay kaifer at all. It doesn't have to pay, there is no such thing as chatzi kaifer. So if an animal kills a man, so if it killed a man 3 times, how did it do it 3 times? It was supposed to be killed the first time. We're talking about it ran away. It killed a man 3 times, so it becomes a mu'ah. Yeah, it had to be 3 different men. It's not, unless it's a cat. So it has to pay kaifer. It has to pay kaifer. It has to pay the value. That's a certain payment. If it didn't do it 3 times, does it have to pay half of kaifer? So the most opinions hold no. So the Gemara could have said, what's the difference between tam and a muad? Besides for the other items that it said, it could have also said that a tam doesn't pay chatzi kaifer. No, only a muad pays the full price when it kills, but a tam doesn't pay anything. And that would be a difference between a tam and a muad. You already said chatzi nezek, that a muad pays nezek shalom, a tam pays chatzi nezek. Muad pays full price, a tam pays half price. Like, you already said that. But it could have had one more item that it could have said that when it comes to killing a man, there's a concept of kaifer where the tam doesn't have to pay anything. So imishum chatzi kaifer alav shiuruhu. The Gemara says that that's not considered that something that it was left out because Hamani Rabbi Yossi Aglili dam tam shalom chatzi kaifer. Maybe the Bryce is following Rabbi Yossi Aglili that holds that a muad pays the full kaifer. That's that type of payment when someone dies, and the tam pays half kaifer, and that was already listed in the Mishnah because the Mishnah says half. That in the Bryce says tam pays half and muad pays full. So you already said that. So now the only thing that you left out was one item that a tam doesn't have to, that the tam doesn't pay on his own admission. That should be a raya. The Gemara leaves off over here, seeming like we have a raya already. That's what it seems like. We have a raya for Rav Papa.
Would the payment be what they consider like the person's age for the payment?
I think it's his value as a slave. I think.
I think there was a scenario like in the Torah, like during certain age, like age of the men, they were able to produce more. Like, I think during the slaves also.
That you're talking about if someone pledges to the temple the person's value, so it depends on his age. There's a difference between the men and the women about how they age.
But here,
That's not the value of a slave. The value of a slave is on the market. Yeah. Taisus has an interesting question. Taisus' question is that if you're asking a question now on Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua that holds that half payment is considered a penalty, and you're asking why didn't you list that he doesn't have to pay on his own admission, that should be a difference between a tam and muad. And then in order to answer that question, you added in that I have one more item that wasn't on that list, which makes sense now that it's not an exhaustive list. What was that other item? That there's no concept of chatzi kaifer. Where it says, so why are you only asking on Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua? Taisus says you could ask on Rav Papa. You ask like this. That Rav Papa, according to Rav Papa, it has 2 items on the list. The difference between the contrast between the tam and the muad. What are the 2 items? That it pays half price and he pays from the body. Muad, on the other hand, pays full price and he pays from the best of the property. Just 1 second. There's one item that he left out. He left out that there's no chatzi kaifer, and we're not supposed to only have one item left out. If I hold of Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, I left out another item. What is that? That I don't pay if I admit. Then it's 2. So it's really a kasha on Rav Papa the other way. That's Taisus' question. Anyway, Taisus says Well, it can get out of that by saying that it's Rabbi Yossi Aglili, and then it's not a question, just like Argamar did as well. Okay, Tashema, come and listen. Turn the page. Test level on base. Hamish Sharius Pliny, Sharius Shal Pliny, Harisa Mishalim Al Piatzma. Someone says that my ox killed so and so. He has to pay on his own. And we're talking about my love, but Tom. Sounds like we're talking about a tame animal. The person admitted self admittance that his animal killed either a person or an ox, and he has to pay either payment for the ox, or he has to pay the payment for the person, which is kaifer. And we're probably talking about a tam. Now, it would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, of course, because that a tam pays chatzi kaifer. But the main point over here is that we're seeing that he pays on his own admittance. That means that that chatzi nezek is considered mammon, like Rav Papa. It's a kashan Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, because if he admits on his own, according to Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua, he should not have to pay. Maida b'knas is pater. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be read. Maida b'knas pater, probably. If he admits, he's exempt from the penalty. That's probably the way it's supposed to be read. Not Maida b'knas, not he's admitting to the penalty. He's Maida, he's admitting b'knas pater. He's exempt from the. That's probably where the comma goes. But let's see. Okay, the Gemara says like b'muad. We're dealing with an ox that's not a tam. You have no proof from here about anything. Talking about a muad, it's forewarned. The fact that he pays on his own admittance, doesn't tell me if a chatzi nezek is a knas or not. Aval tam mais. What's going to be if it is a tame? If it is a docile animal? Hachanami dein mishal mal piatzme. What do you want to say? That he doesn't pay on his own? He's not going to have to pay, and you want to say that this would be a proof to Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua? He says, 1 second. Let's go further. It says in the Seifa that we're going to ask, instead of the end of this price is saying one thing, it should have said something better. It goes like this. Hey, if a person says that my ox killed so-and-so's slave, what's the halacha? He has to pay 30 coins, right? That's the rule. If an ox kills a slave, he has to pay 30 coins. Ein mishalim, I'm sorry. Ein mishalim al piatzmi. He doesn't pay on his own. Now, 30 coins, because it's a flat fee, so that's obviously a knas, a penalty. There's no such thing as a flat fee. That's restitution, right? That's always a penalty. So we're saying over here that we're looking for a contrast. We're looking for a contrast when he pays on his own admittance and when he doesn't pay. If he says my ox scored either an animal or a person, he pays at his own admittance. If he says my ox scored a slave, then it doesn't pay on his own admittance. Our Gemara says that we're talking about it's talking about a muad. Gemara asks, why did you have to make a contrast? My ox scored a man or an animal that he pays on his own admittance, but he doesn't have to pay by the slave. Why doesn't the Gemara just say, my ox scored a man or an animal, he pays only if it's a muad. My ox scored a man or an animal, he doesn't pay if it's a tam. Why do you have to jump to the slave to show a contrast? You could have done it by the tam. The Gemara likes to look at the contrast from the same topic that we're discussing. You don't have to go like very far out to find the contrast if you have the contrast right here in the. So, and the fact that it doesn't do that, that's a proof that a tam it does pay a bifnei atzmei. It's a proof to Rav Papa. It's a kashan Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua. Gemara says kula b'muad kamari. Nope, it's not a question because we're not dealing with a tam anyway. The whole Bryce is talking about a muad. You're asking me that I should have spoken about a tam. I wasn't talking about a tam. I'm giving you a contrast in muad. I'm giving you a contrast. In forewarned animals, sometimes it pays on its own, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. Tashema. Zaklal. Here's the rule. Anyone that pays any more than the damage is obviously a penalty, and he doesn't pay on his own. That would be, for example, if he steals and he has to pay double, or right. That's he doesn't pay on his own admittance, because that's the rule that anyone that admits doesn't pay a penalty, right? His own admittance doesn't incur a penalty. My love said only if he pays more than the value, he doesn't pay on his own. But let's say he's paying less than the value. For example, Tom that pays half price, then he does pay. Mishalim, he does pay on his own admittance. Another proof to Rav Papa. It's only if he pays extra that he doesn't pay on his own admittance. The Gemara says, "Like, mishalim." What you're really supposed to learn from that is not that if you pay less. You're supposed to learn from it like this: anyone that pays more than the value, he doesn't pay on his own admittance. But if it's the actual value, then he does pay. But don't look about less. We weren't discussing. What is going to be actually if it's less than the value? Like, for example, a tam. You want to say that he doesn't pay, which would mean Rav Huna Bar Yeshua is correct because it's a penalty. If that's the case, if you want to tell me that less than the damage you do have to pay on your own, if you want to tell me that less than the damage you don't have to pay on your own, then why? He answering for Rav Huna Bar Yeshua. Then why did the Brisa say anyone that pays more than the damage doesn't pay? It should have just said anyone that doesn't pay the actual value doesn't pay on his own. Then that would include either more or less. So, the Gemara says that's a strong kasha, and based on this price, what would we think that it would be Palganiska's moment, right? Based on this price, based on our question, we would conclude that it's considered restitution, and that he should pay on his own admittance if he admits that his animal gored. Gemara says, however, the halacha is Palganiska knasa. The halacha is that half price, the half payment is considered a penalty. The Gemara says, you just concluded that you have a strong kasha that you don't have any answer for, and based on that question, we should say that half the price is considered restitution, and then you tell me, but the halacha is different. You asked the question, you got an answer, and then you change the halacha. It says in. What was the reason why we had a question? Because it didn't say, what was the big question? The question is, it didn't say that anyone that doesn't pay exactly the price of the value, it didn't say that. It doesn't say that anyone that doesn't pay exactly the price of the value doesn't pay on his own admittance. It doesn't say that. So that would imply that if it's less than the value, the fact that it didn't say that less than the value means he does pay on his own admittance. That would mean it's moment. But the Gemara says that it's not actually accurate, because the reason why it didn't say anyone that doesn't pay exactly the value doesn't pay on his own admittance, because it's not 100% true. There's one exception, and that exception is kivan dik leipsikale. It's not 100% accurate, because kivan dik achatzi nesek tzreiris. We mentioned this before. There's a concept of tzreiris, where an animal is walking on pebbles, and pebbles shoot out. It didn't have the tire guard on the back of the hand. The pebbles shoot out and they break a glass vase or something on the side. Yeah, but the lawnmower is mamash kaicha, is basically like swinging a bat, hitting. I know. No, but that's exactly what it's doing here. You have a regular animal walking. It's really trampling. If it steps on something, that's considered trampling. Now, it didn't step on it there. It's something shot out from under it, and it caused the damage on the side. It's a little different than the normal way, okay? So yeah, it's like the Saga Borcha along the way. So we only charge half price for that. Now that half price is Allah Misinai, but that's mammon, that's restitution, that's not a penalty. So the fact that the Brisa didn't say that anyone that doesn't pay the full price, the exact amount, is considered a penalty is because it couldn't say that, because I have one case where you don't pay the full amount where it's not a penalty, it's actual restitution. And that is Chatzi Nesek Tzroyos. So that's why it didn't say that. And therefore we can say that the halacha is Chatzi Nesek is a knas. We had a kasha. They said we have an answer to that kasha. It's interesting that the Gemara comes up with a tiyufta, with a teretz on a tiyufta. Okay.
The penalties, do they go sometimes to the business, sometimes to the damaged party, or is it always to the business?
No, over here it would go to the damaged party.
They always.
Not always, but over here it goes to the damaged
Yes.
party. A lot of the case, yeah, David mentioned this. Talking about where the penalty goes. It goes to the Bezdin or to the damaged party. Yeah. Okay. Hafsadamar Palgan in this knasa. Now that you mentioned that half, what do you have there? It's the old fashioned.
That's a good reason.
So
Chocolate chips first thing in the day.
one of the one of the benefits of coming in person to the Shia is that you get a chocolate chip from okay. Now that we said Palganiska Knasa, that half the payment is a penalty, Hai Kalbadachal Imri. The sheep, I'm sorry, this dog that eats sheep. Imri is sheep, right? Is that what it says over there? Bishunra Dachal Tanagoyla, and a cat that ate a rooster, right? Tanagoyla. Bishunahu, that's considered abnormal. And you can't collect it in Bavel. What does it mean? It's Mishuna? Mishuna means that it would.
It's not the usual.
It's not the usual, and the payment would be half payment, half the price. Anything that's Mishuna, that's a little bit, that's not a normal way of damaging, is going to go under the category of Keren. That was what the significance of this parak is, that we have categories of damages. And if it fits in the criteria, then it goes under that category. So anything that's considered not a normal way of animal to walk, to eat, it does something abnormal, it goes under the category of Keren, and it only pays half price. Problem is, half price is a penalty. And the rule is that only a real court can collect penalties. But in Bavel, or in America, we don't have a real Bezdin, and so in Israel today as well. Besides for they don't have a real court, so therefore you're not going to be able to collect if a dog eats a sheep. That's abnormal, or if a cat eats a rooster.
The category of not forewarned.
Yeah, it would be not forewarned as well, and it would be a half price.
And so you would pay half price plus a penalty.
No, the whole penalty is the half price is a penalty, and that's why you can't pay it if you don't have a Bezdin. And Bezdin with smicha. That would only be with big sheep or big roosters. However,
Jews love.
but if it's small, then that's considered normal. Vitafas, but if someone grabs, he grabs payment. We don't take it away from him. The Yomar, if he says if he says 1 second, I'm going to go to Israel, and over there I'm going to get a judgment. So then we give him that time to do it. And if he doesn't go, then how do they translate Mishamtina? They put him in Chayrim. They put him in Chayrim that because he has to protect his dog and his cat.
Excommunicate.
Excommunicate. Yeah, he's banned.
This is a really interesting case where you can do something on your own, but if you come to Beis Din first and say, "Can I do it?" they will tell you, "No, you can't do it." And
Right.
and that may be the answer to the question we had earlier about why do we have to go through all these things? Isn't it obvious you can't do things on your own? Because some things you can do on your own.
So you're saying even though all of the halachas of Chatzi Nesek are not relevant, but if you grab it, it still is relevant. Yeah.
Is that similar to?
The difference between asking permission first and forgiveness later.
Yeah, something like that. That's right.
I was thinking, what about two Jews? One goes to a regular court first, and he can't go to a basic. Would that be similar?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a real halacha that he can't go to a Bezdin afterwards, but I think it's the Bezdin won't take it. You go to a Bezdin, yeah. Now, I'm not sure, what does it mean over here if he doesn't go to Israel, Mishamtinam, like, how does it translate it in your Gemara? Let me take a look.
Party said.
And if he does not go, we excommunicate for disobeying the order of the court. But the court didn't tell him that fix a time for me to go to Israel to present the case before the judges. We fix a time and require the owner of the belligerent animal to go to the court in Eretz Yisrael at that time. Oh, that's what it's saying. That if the mazik doesn't go to the court, the mazik doesn't go along to the court. The mazik has to go to the court to pay up. The mazik doesn't go. We put the mazik in chayrim. But but either way, he's in chayrim because he has to put away. He has to get rid of the damaging animal. Neither Reb Nassan, like Reb Nassan says, Tanya Reb Nassan Naimer, Reb Nassan taught. How do you know that a person's not allowed to have a bad dog in his house? He's not allowed to have a broken ladder in his house. You can't have blood in your house. You should not place blood in your house. The bad dog is something that you're supposed to have. A dog that's a vicious dog.
Especially on Shabbos, right?
Why? Especially on Shabbos.
Right, because you're not supposed to have contact with blood.
Yeah.
You can have a good dog, but you have to have a bad dog sign. No, you can't say beware dog. It's got to be like a sign of a bad dog, beware bad dog. Because that is your protection in case your dog harms anybody. If you just said cute dog inside this and then the harms you, no recourse. It's a crazy law.
What's the reason if a dog bites a person, they kill it?
They don't kill it.
They don't kill it?
No. Muzzle it. Because it might have been, a person put their hand out, this and that, and asked for it. Does it
Depends on the
twice?
state.
If it's what?
Depends on the state of the situation.
Yeah,
But in certain
would know
states, they
more.
kill the dog, right?
He knows all about that.
Well, like for example, I was at a dog park and somebody brought a big dog, like 100 and whatever pounds. The day after they got it from the pound, they didn't know if it was going to do anything.
Right.
So it ended up, I turned my head, I grabbed my little dog in its mouth, and I looked away for a second, like with kids.
Yeah.
And I looked and the dog was in my, and the people that own the dog in California, they know that you're, what's the word? You have to pay. You have to pay for whatever happens to the dog or anybody else.
Right.
But in Florida, you don't. In Florida, your dog can get killed at the dog park. No responsibility.
Really?
It's up to the
I didn't know that. David is
Okay.
telling us that if a dog gets bites another dog or kills another dog, that he doesn't have to pay. Why not? He must hold. Because Palganiska Knasa. Maybe in Florida they hold. We don't have. That's half there. It's the first time. But do they kill? And over here they don't kill the dog.
That's
Maybe it's the fourth time.
sure, but I think that was the old days that they did that. But now
If the dog has a history, like they'll come after you. Before when I used to watch the news, I saw a lot of those cases. And sometimes like people to not have to pay the other party, like they would give in the dog. People
Right.
like in California, I had insurance, so it would have taken care of most of it.
Right.
But I also could have sued the people in California. So they I guess they knew that because You're like, here, we'll pay for it.
Okay, let's try to get to the top of the next
Okay,
page at least.
sorry.
Let's see. Chamisha tam and chamisha ma'adin. There's 5 things that are tame and. I think if we should stop here, a little behind.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Sort of.
And the dog owners will do it.
Let's leave it at the Mishnah. Let's leave it at the Mishnah. Sorry. Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Make it up.
We'll have to learn Thursday night. Yeah,
Throw on me tonight.
it's complicated.
Thursday night, there's a Farbrengen.
Oh, Thursday night is for bringing?
For you, isn't it what, Thursday for you?
Okay, if it's
Whatever.
Thursday night, then we'll have to do Wednesday.
You,
But,
whatever. What's the one?
Okay, have a good day. Shua tov.